Good morning, everybody. As most of you know, I'm coming to the end of my time in this role as senior minister here, and you do some counting when that happens. Over 300 sermons, taught about 40 classes or so. I got to be a part of about 20 practitioners becoming practitioners, about 50 or so ceremonies, weddings, baptisms, funerals. It's nice to have the sacred trifecta and have them all happen in one day, the circle of life. But you go through all that and you have to ask yourself, what have I learned? What have I learned in this time? And next week I'm going to share a bit about what I've learned from you. But I wanted to focus today a little bit on what I've learned about being a good minister or about ministry. And you may have to dig behind the scenes a little bit, but I think that what I've learned about being a good minister also applies to being a good whatever you are, a good person. And one of the most important lessons I've learned is that in order to be a good minister, I have to be committed to thriving. If I want to be a good minister, I have to be committed to thriving. I think that's true of any of us who find ourselves in a position where we're wanting to inspire people around us. If you want to be a good parent, you have to be committed to your own thriving. If you want to be a good boss, you have to be committed to your own thriving. If you want to be a good friend, because how can you, in sincerity, tell someone to pursue their highest good when you yourself will not do it? How can you, in all sincerity, tell someone to step out of a situation that's toxic for them when you yourself are still in one? How can you, in sincerity, tell someone to stop treating themselves negatively when you're the first in line to do it to yourself? As Sherry Huber once said, if someone else treated you the way you treated yourself, you would have gotten rid of yourself a long time ago. And so it's tricky being committed to our own thriving. And early on in my ministry, I didn't get this lesson. I had started a church, and there were some good seeds there in the Irvine area. Some of you came and visited me there. Hey, Larry, I remember you there. And there were some good seeds there, and I was telling people to thrive, but I myself was not. So even if it was a good talk, there was something off. The church was going okay, but I wasn't doing okay. I was broke. I was in a relationship at the time that was toxic. I wasn't taking care of my own body. And I had to stop. It took me a couple years to recover, to learn that lesson in ministry, to learn to be committed to my own thriving before I start telling people to be committed to their own thriving. And the wonderful thing that happened to me is a couple years after that, I got the opportunity to be here. And to learn that if I wanted to thrive and have a thriving ministry, I myself was going to have to take good care of myself. And boy, has being here helped me to learn and to do that. I've also learned, especially this last year, faced with this decision, this great opportunity to go and be a part of the Mile High Church, that I knew that there was a big part of me that didn't want to do it, that didn't want to go because I so love being here. But I know that by saying no to that, at some level in my heart, I knew I'd be saying no to my own highest good, my own thriving. And even though I could stay here and be comfortable here and be happy here at some level, always and forever, I knew that I wouldn't be the same kind of minister. I wouldn't have the same quality as I did before, because I would lose that sense of authenticity, because I wouldn't have been committed to doing what was highest and best in relationship to my calling at the time. It's an important question to ask ourselves. Am I committed to my highest good no matter what? Are you committed to your highest good no matter what? Oh, don't all say yes at one time. Even if it demands letting go. Even if it demands transformation. Even if it demands stepping into the unknown. Even if it demands feeling tender or vulnerable. Because it can lead to better transformation, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. If you want to inspire others, you must be committed to your own thriving. Another essential lesson that I've learned is that you don't choose who you minister to. Who you minister to chooses you. I found that to be true about friendship as well. I don't think you really choose your friends. They kind of choose you. They choose to be there and show up for you. And at a certain level, it's true of family like that too. Biological or spiritual, chosen family. You don't necessarily choose them. They choose you. They choose to support you and be there with you. Early on in my ministry, I had a clear target market of who I wanted to minister to. I was very clear. I wanted younger adults because that's who I had worked with in the past, and that's what I was at the time, and agnostics. I was really into agnostics. I wanted to have a big old atheist church. It was a little weird. And sometimes people would come up that weren't that. They'd show up, and I would love seeing them, but I would be a little resentful at the same time of that. I remember learning this lesson the hard way one Sunday. There was these two gorgeous women that came in. So not only were they gorgeous, but they also were agnostic and young adults. And they sat down, and I gave the talk, and I hope I gave a good talk. But at the end, there was the line of people saying goodbye. And I said goodbye to the girls. And then a gentleman came up and he said, "Josh, you gave a really good talk, but it was just kind of interesting. You only spoke to one side of the room." I had been caught. So I was embarrassed, but the lesson began to be taught to me at that time. And being here at this center has taught me so much, not to try and control who you're trying to speak to or connect with, but that the great glory of this life is the synchronistic people that are drawn to you at the right time in such a perfect way. Isn't that the beauty of life? It's one thing to know your calling, to know what you're here for, to know what you're here to do. But we're full of it if we think we know ahead of time who it's for or what it's for. Know why you're here, know what you love to do, and I've been so blessed being able to find out these last 7 years what I'm here for. But don't try to outline how it's supposed to show up for you. If you are dedicated in any way in your life in helping others discover the sacred in themselves or inspiring people, at some level in my mind, you're a minister. And I brought some favorite words of mine from the Christian minister Frederick Buechner, who talks about this, about finding our passion and our calling and yet trusting the world to provide us the right opportunities to give it without trying to force it. He says, there are all different kinds of voices calling you to all different kinds of work. And the problem is to find out which is the voice of God rather than of society, say, or the superego, or self-interest. By and large, a good rule for finding this out is this. The kind of work God usually calls you to is the kind of work, A, that you need most to do, and B, that the world most needs to have done. If you really get a kick out of your work, you've presumably met requirement A, but if your work is writing TV deodorant commercials, the chances are you've missed requirement B. On the other hand, if your work is being a doctor in a leper colony, you've probably met requirement B, but if most of the time you're bored and depressed by it, the chances are you have not only bypassed A, but probably aren't helping your patients much either. Buechner goes on to say, the place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's hunger meet. Do you know what your deep gladness is? That which resonates with your soul, that which tells you that you are a soul, that which fills you with that joy of life. Do you know? It's great to know that without needing to know what the world's hungry for. It may be something that's really apparent, but it may just be a singular moment when you run into a stranger one day. It may be the desire to pick up a pen and sheet of paper and write something down that comes forward. The world, my friends, is starving. The world is starving. And it has brought you forth. It has brought you about. This Holy Spirit has brought you forth so that you can feed it. You are its food. You are its shelter. You are its charity. You are its sacredness. And when we embrace those gifts that we've been born with, life has a certain way, if we trust it, of bringing us where we're supposed to be to give those gifts. Where early on in my ministry I had it all mapped out and wanted to tell everything what to be, the universe kicked my butt for that, and I learned just to do a damn good job of what I was doing where I was. And out of that, all the best opportunities, all the best individuals have come to me. I haven't applied for a single job in ministry. Everything's come forward at its particular time. And perhaps in your own life, in your own way, you have found the right opportunities, the right people, the right epiphanies, just when you need them, by being the best who you are. Now, I know I'm a bit of a lame duck minister up here. Not too much time left, and so some of you are thinking, well, who's our next minister going to be? And we need to have a good job description there for the new minister, right? They've got to be good at talks. They've got to care about the youth program. They've got to be a good teacher. Around here, they've got to pick up the vacuum once in a while. They've got to stay on Floran's good side. I always keep a toe in her bad side, just because it keeps us in good form with one another. What else do we need in a new minister? What else is an important part of that job description? She probably has one written out. Sense of humor. They got to be funny. What else? Humility. Very good. Right. Sweet. Smiles. Good listeners. All right. Anything else? Compassion, caring. Loving. Oh. Well, this is everybody here. You don't need a minister. No, that sounds great. Patience. Patience is important here. They got to be a good teacher. And so I want to share. Dory.
I want to say that you just come clean with who you are all the time, and that's one of the reasons I love you so much.
Okay, they've got to come clean. Thank you. So I do want to share a couple things that are really important, two things in particular to look for in your new minister. And if they don't have either of these in spades, I don't care how great they talk, how good they seem to teach, don't hire them. One, Cindy hit upon, and it's do they listen? Do they listen? I have found that really the only quality you need to be a good minister or a good inspirer is listening. It's changed my life. It's the thing that I'm best at, and it's that area where I still have the most growing to do. Listening, that's right. And I've found that. I had the best lesson about that here in this church from Frida Wright, one of our practitioners who passed away last year. And we had an annual meeting. I'd been here just a few months, and something happened that she didn't like about it. And so she sat me down, and as Frida would, she let me know for about 20 or 30 minutes. And she was very upset. And there had been some different issues in the church that had happened for a while, so she had some trust about new ministers coming in. And she shared her story and her upset with me, and I just shook. I was scared to death. This is a powerful woman. You really want her to like you. And so she walked away, and I continued to shake for days and days, thinking about how can I fix this situation? How can I make it better? How can I help her? How can I help me? How can I help the church? What can I do to fix? And nothing came to mind, but it was something interesting did happen. A few days later, there was a little card that came in the mail, and I opened it up, and it was from Frida, and it just had 3 words on it. It said, "Thanks for listening." And there's an important message in there for all of us when it comes to living an inspired or sacred life. It's not our job to fix someone's problems for them. It's not our job to tell people what to think and what to do. It's our job to be present, even in the pain and the hurt of it. Present to know that the person we're listening to is capable not only of solving their own problem, that perhaps all that they really need to do is to be accepted and heard. And that's why I don't even remember what the problem was, per se. But Frida gave me that important lesson about ministry. And what an important one to apply to our lives, because listening is actually dare I say, a dangerous thing to do sometimes. Because when you risk listening, you risk changing your mind. You risk transforming yourself. You risk changing. But to listen is to make ourselves vulnerable to something sacred and intimate. I've learned that listening in ministry doesn't just apply to one-on-one conversations. It actually is the most essential part of the Sunday morning experience for me. You have taught me how to give a sermon in the best possible way. When I came here, because some of the folks didn't look the way that I thought I was supposed to minister to the folks I was supposed to minister to, I thought maybe some of the folks here might be a little stuck up. I thought, I'll just be a good job. I'll read from the signs of my textbook, and everybody will like that. And it'll work that way. And what I learned was that you are my people. And I am your people. You know what? Gosh, they have a sense of humor. Gosh, they have these amazing stories. Wow, I feel so honored to get to be chosen to be a talking head for the wisdom in this space. And so what I learned was giving a sermon isn't giving a speech. It's having a conversation. That giving a talk isn't about sharing what you think. It's representing how much was I able to tune in this week to the collective wisdom so I could share it back. Giving a sermon is about having a rapport. Just like any good relationship in our life, it's not about talking at somebody. It's talking with somebody. The best compliment I ever get in ministry is, gosh, it felt like you were just talking to me today. And that hits my goal. My goal is to talk to one person and to hope everybody thinks it's them. And if I hit that, it meant that I was listening. And so that's why I do things. I try to greet as many people as possible at the door. And people go, Josh, when do you start writing your sermons? And the answer is as soon as I get home. As soon as I get home today, I take out a piece of paper and I start writing notes for next week, because that's been the nearest I've been with you, to hear and listen. You can try to run your life, you can try to control your life, but the gift is to listen to your life and then reflect back the best that you've heard along the way. So in your next minister, do they listen? And second, do they make people precedent? Are people the most important thing? And to me, they are. And I know sometimes it gets funky because we say, the teaching's so important and God is so important. And yes, but it's through these people that we experience and know what divinity is. So many of us in our lives, whatever your ministry looks like, sometimes we get caught in the trap of thinking our to-do list is more important than the person that's in front of us, or the person that's beside us, or the person that's behind us. I can't tell you how many times I wanted to shut the door so so-and-so didn't walk in so I could finish the email. Or how I wanted to make everything about the Easter service go off without a hitch. That I didn't want to be present to someone who was in pain in that moment. It's so easy to give in to the to-do list. And it's not that the to-do list isn't important, and we need strong boundaries to do that, but people are precedent. There is nothing more important in your life when it comes to the people that you care for and wanting to inspire them than to be present to them, than to listen to them the best you can, and to be authentic with them. And when you can be those things in your life, I think the true fruits of life begin to bear. There are a few rules that I've created for myself on Sunday mornings that I've learned from my time here. They're really essential rules now for me, but I think they're good rules for life too. The first rule, and this is another job description point, is to be prepared. It's such an honor to speak to this group that to not be prepared is to be out of integrity. And so I have a rule that the moment I walk in that door Sunday morning, I don't even care how unclear I am on what I'm going to say. I have to accept that. I might be Rick, I might be a whole perfect and complete mess. But I've got to be prepared and ready to go no matter how that goes. So to always be prepared. Rule number 2, you've got to be able to look everyone in the eye. Everyone in the eye. That's a hard thing to do sometimes. In church, it's usually pretty easy, but I got to know if there's someone that I would rather not look at because of something that happened, I've got to call and clear that up. I got to have a conversation, or I've got to go back into my prayer work. Even in everyday life, I think that's a great question. Before you leave that door, is there anyone whose eyes I wouldn't want to be running into today? You have it. I kind of have that like when going to the grocery store. I have a list of like 5 or 6 people where I go, I hope they're not in there. Oh my gosh. So it's not that you have to like everybody, but there's that idea of being able to go over any face, anything that's going on, and to be able to connect with yourself to say, I will be what my values are. in relationship to this person or this incident or whatever it is. There's nothing more important to living a sincere and courageous life than to be able to look whatever it is right in the face, right in the eyes as we go about our days. The third thing that's really helped me is a 24-hour rule. 24-hour rules. Sometimes they wonder, ministry is a way of life, but the reason I take Mondays off is so I can practice the 24-hour rule. And so that means if something ticks you off on Sunday, the practitioner perhaps goes on a little too long. Maybe the music's a little off. Maybe the minister isn't quite up to snuff that day. Maybe someone says something that presses a button in me. Anything that just bugs me. If something's unsafe, you got to handle that right away. But I like to sit on things for 24 hours, and if I still feel the same way about them I did 24 hours before, I follow up. If not, I let it go. If not, I let it go. One of my favorite practices that I've learned here that I think is also a great practice for life is I call it the 3 things. And so I'll tell you now, if some of you didn't know that because you're welcome to come tonight or next Sunday night, is I go to my church away from church. It's called O'Malley's. It's right here down the street. I get a big, tall beer. I drink that beer slowly, and I take out my phone and I write 3 things in the subject line, and it's an email I send myself. And I write 3 things that went really well and 3 things that could have gone better. You can use different language there. But something that may have gone well is a great mini talk from Rick. The music was on fire. The kids program was awesome. And maybe something that didn't go wrong. Maybe I didn't feel as prepared in my talk. Or maybe we didn't have enough programs. And it's kind of a neat thing. It doesn't mean that you have to fix those things right away, but just bring mindfulness to them. And can you imagine if you did that for your life every day? 3 things that went really well and 3 things that, could have gone better. And for me, just bringing that into mindfulness, it doesn't demand action, but it brings an awareness that helps things move forward. And this church, because of the wonderful uniqueness of who each of us are, it helped me build a ministerial philosophy, which I hope to be a philosophy that I'm able to put into life too. And the philosophy is change nothing, evolve everything. Change nothing, evolve everything. There's so many of us who enter into relationships, jobs, and situations with projects for improving things. We wind up usually being sanded down in that process. I think of words like control or needing to see things as a reflection of ourselves, getting caught up in the ego, we might say. But for me, the great gift of ministry and the great gift of life is to be able to show up with awareness, with our virtues, so that we're not needing to change, but we're wanting to get the best of everything that's there. The best out of every individual, the best out of each program, the best out of ourselves. We don't do that through meddling. We do that through trusting, through support. And what I've loved about being about this church is we're the jewel by the sea. And I didn't create the jewel, but my job has been to do the best I can to help it shine. We all have that jewel within us. And it's each of our job not to put the jewel there, but to do our own work, our own evolving for ourselves and perhaps those around us to help that jewel shine, the jewel of who we are. So just taking a closing moment in prayer, if you so choose to join me, I just invite you to think of any of the many lessons that I've learned and to see if one resonates for you. One around listening or putting people first. One about taking a 24-hour rule. One about being committed to your own thriving. Whatever it may be, let us apply that rule to any situation in our lives that may be presenting itself as a challenge. We can ask ourselves, am I being fully present? And am I truly listening to what life has me to know about what it is? Am I really open to feeding that place the starving world calls me to? Am I truly committed to my highest and best? Surrendering to our highest and best, I know we give in to our higher selves. We let go to our deeper being. We allow to come forward what has always already been there, that highest and glorious truth of the sacred in us all. And so it is. Amen. So thank you for your time, everyone, this morning. It's wonderful to be here.